What UEFI BIOS settings do I need to install Linux correctly? Imagine turning on your computer and wanting to install Linux, but the system just won't boot from your USB or DVD. That's frustrating, right? The secret lies in the right UEFI or BIOS settings. These settings are like the instructions your computer follows to start up properly. If you get them right, installing Linux becomes smooth and hassle-free. First, you need to set your system to use UEFI mode instead of legacy BIOS mode. UEFI stands for Unified Extensible Firmware Interface. It's the modern way computers start up and supports features like faster boot times and secure boot. If you plan to install Linux alongside Windows 8 or later, UEFI mode is the best choice. For a single Linux installation, either UEFI or legacy BIOS can work, but UEFI is recommended for newer hardware. Next, look for the Secure Boot setting. Secure Boot is a UEFI feature that only allows signed operating systems to boot, which boosts security. Most Linux distributions support Secure Boot, but if you run into issues, you might need to disable Secure Boot. This is usually done in the Firmware Settings menu. Another important setting is Fast Boot or Quick Boot. This option speeds up startup by skipping some hardware checks. However, it can cause problems when installing Linux because it skips steps needed for proper hardware recognition. Turn off Fast Boot to make sure your system fully initializes hardware during installation. If your system has Intel Smart Response technology, disable it. This feature is designed to speed up Windows using solid-state drives, but it can interfere with Linux installation. You also need to check the boot order. Make sure your USB drive or DVD is set as the first boot device. This way, when you restart, your computer will boot directly from the installation media. For systems with Compatibility Support Module, or CSM, decide whether to enable or disable it. If you want to install Linux in UEFI mode, disable CSM. If you prefer legacy mode or have hardware issues, enable CSM. When installing Linux in UEFI mode, your installer will create or use an FI system partition. This partition is formatted with FAT32 and stores bootloaders. Make sure this partition exists or is created during the installation process. If you are dual booting with Windows, ensure both operating systems use the same boot mode, either UEFI or legacy BIOS, to avoid boot conflicts. After installing Linux, the bootloader like Grub must be installed in UEFI mode to the FI partition. This ensures your system can boot into Linux properly. In summary, for most modern computers, switch your firmware to UEFI mode, disable Secure Boot if needed, turn off Fast Boot, and set your boot priority to your installation media. These steps make installing Linux easier and more reliable. Legacy BIOS mode can still work for older hardware, but UEFI is the way forward for most systems today.